You are listening to me talking to myself. Welcome to the podcast where I share useful tools to create more space, more freedom, inner peace, connection, and life on purpose. In this episode, I'm not talking to myself, I'm talking to my friend Louis, who I met in Vancouver. He is an athlete, a movement coach, a yoga teacher, an amazing tour guide, and just generally very energetic, kind, and caring person. And very passionate about what he does and about sharing his passion for movement with other people. He is a co-founder of the Vancity movement, and he was part of the Canada's Ultimate Challenge show last year. And as we have a conversation about movement to make it more authentic, we are of course in motion. We recorded this podcast while driving, so you might hear some background sounds. Enjoy, get inspired, and learn useful tools to improve the quality of your life and your relationships through movement. Welcome everyone. My guest today is Louis. We met in one of his movement classes in Vancouver. And the conversation today is about movement and the importance of movement in our daily life. Do you want to introduce yourself?
So yes, I'm Louis from Canada, here in Vancouver, BC. I've been doing yoga for about 10 years, and I stumbled upon movement in the last 5-ish years. And I found new ways to move my body and enjoy my health and my practice. Yeah. I'm also 39, I'm Vietnamese, and in the last summer, I got to experience a trip of a lifetime. I got to go on a reality TV game show, and I got to compete across Canada and explore Canada on this game show, and it was pretty cool.
That sounds very exciting. So, could you share your idea of movement? So, when you talk about movement practice, what are you talking about?
Yeah, movement practice. Just finding different ways to move your body, whether it's playing on your hands, going upside down, or acrobatically, dynamically, in a cartwheel, or just finding different clever ways to use the body and the mechanics again. I always like to call the movement practice reverse engineering. Like going back to our childhood when rolling around the ground, playing on your hands, playing with your friends, playing games, whatever it is, using this body to move in different ways was the most intuitive and the most instinctive and the most primed. I see a lot of times, even in my own life, I get a little bit more stagnant, I get a little bit older, I make excuses, and I don't get to move and feel the same way I used to. So when I stumbled on a movement practice, I started to play on my hands more, I started playing my squats more, I started to play rolling around on the floor more, and some of my day-to-day stresses like injuries or tight back, tight hips, it started to go away just by sitting in squat, just by rolling on my back on the hard floor, and then maybe going up into a cartwheel on top of my hands. So a lot of my ailments in my body went away. So a movement practice was very addictive to me. It was very therapeutical. It just made me feel young and good. So I like to call it reverse engineering. Take some of that time back.
So you started movement to heal some of your injuries primarily, or was it for a different reason?
Well, if you're going to talk about the movement I'm kind of doing now with locomotion, with soft acrobatics, with contemporary, then no. I got into yoga 10 years ago. I was looking for new ways to better my health. I was out of shape. I was smoking cigarettes. I wasn't in a good place in my life at that time. And then I found yoga, and yoga allowed me to feel. And now I became a yoga teacher, ironically, because yoga has left that impression in my life. But my yoga has evolved over years. But the one thing I did learn about yoga was I learned to feel. And I realized, and the motto I use in my practice nowadays is when you start to feel, you can start to heal. And when you can start to heal and you can start to feel, you can start to love yourself again. And the practice, the movement, the way my movement practice started was I got to fall in love with myself, with my body again, with my fitness, that I'm capable of doing things I never imagined I thought doing. And that allowed me to open new doors to other types of movement, like dancing. I've learned to partner dance a little bit. I've learned to do contemporary. I've learned to do cartwheels, acrobatics. I'm working on my handstands. And I didn't have that as a child. I didn't know I could do half the things I can do now. I thought you had to be specially gifted or eligible. Like there was a raffle or a draw saying you can and cannot be a specific athlete or mover or dancer. So now to be able to experience that later in my life, it's a blessing. I'm passionate and it's very liberating. So now I don't stop moving at my age. I find different creative ways to move. I find different reasons to move. But yes, going into yoga I was looking to heal some of my post-traumas and my lack of awareness and movement of my body. But now later on into my movement journey and career, it was more about researching, finding different ways I can challenge myself, not necessarily healing the body, but the more I realized that the more you challenge yourself and the body, the more you start to heal some of the old ailments. It's like stagnant water versus moving water. Moving water will always be more flowy, powerful. Stagnant water, it's stale. It just stays stagnant. So I don't allow the body to stay stale and stagnant. I always try to keep it moving, keep it light, keep it fluid. I like that feeling of being loose. So I move all day, every day, throughout the day. I practice it, but just even throughout my days, you spent the day with me. I'm always rotating, moving my spine or stretching my shoulders. I don't let anything get built up too much. But yeah, it's a two-way street. But nowadays, I don't look to go heal something. I just find, this helps me here. I'll continue to do it. Wow, I have more space and more room and more strength in certain ranges now because of my movement practice and the passion for it.
So can you talk about the body and mind, body and brain relationship and connection in terms of movement? So you mentioned some things, how movement helps you in your daily life. Anything you would like to add?
Yeah, there's many things that you can suffer in life, and I'm going to go this route for a minute. There's many things you can suffer in life, but I believe the body shouldn't be one. You can't control what happens to you on the outside, like the noise, the people, the politics, the rules, the laws, whatever. But the one thing we do have control of, and we need to start to use it and appreciate it and start to build it, is the body. And I always like to say, the reason why we have control is because we can control the way we move, we can control the way we feel, and we can control the way we think. But sometimes we're just a little bit out of practice. That it doesn't feel like we're in control anymore. And that's when people start to suffer their body or suffer their mind, is when they start to lose control of the mind and the body. But truly, if I want to think about ice cream, I can think about ice cream. And if I want to move my body and do some exercise, I can move my body and do some exercise. If I'm tight here, I can stretch there, kind of deal. But sometimes we suffer the body, we suffer the mind, and we lose that disconnection that we think we can't, or that's just aging, or that's just life. Life just goes through this repetitive cycle. But me doing my movement practice, I realize it's a never-ending process. But the more I can liberate the physical body from all the tension and stress and tightness, I also realize that I can relieve a lot of the emotional side of it as well. The stress, the drama, I'm more relaxed. And that plays a role with your mind, body, and soul connection, because how your body feels will allow you and dictate how your personality would be, how fearful you'd be. Because now that I have a better, stronger body and I move well, I'm comfortable in my knees, my hips, my hands, my fingers, it has built confidence because I do more with my body in my life. Yoga, movement opened new doors to rock climbing. I love to rock climb now. I'm hanging off the side of a mountain on 2 fingers. And because of movement and yoga, I can do the splits. So I don't have hip pain and back pain like most people who come to me for help. And I don't know that feeling. So it plays a role into my thought process and my personality. I'm more relaxed, I'm more confident, I'm more brave. And then just that connection of how I feel in my body is kind of how I'm going to feel that day. So I think there's a broad connection, and there's more details to mind and body connection. But I realized that it's a relationship, it's a dance. To feed the mind is to feed the body, but to feed the body is to feed the mind. Meaning, I can't just do the physical movement stuff. I also have to continue to learn to stimulate the mind by learning new things and challenging the brain, because how we learn anything is how we learn everything. But I always find that there's more to take when you're learning something new and in the beginning, because a lot of your work goes into a lot of results. As when you're deeper into your movement practice or into your philosophy practice of life, the more work you do, the less results you get, because you're fine detailing and tuning. So in my movement practice, I'm always trying to go to new classes, to learn new things. Not just to challenge the body, but to challenge the mind. Can I do this? Why does it make me feel the way I feel? But when I put some more time and energy into it, how does my mind feel? How do I feel liberated? And I enjoy that mind and body connection.
So, what is the relationship between movement and emotions? So, the relationship between movement of emotions and movement of the physical body.
That's a tough one. I mean, they say we hold our emotions and tension in our body. So I find when you're the most free in your movements, when you're doing your flows or doing your whatever it is in your life, it's definitely attached to your emotions. I find like the stiffer the person is in their body, the stiffer their emotions are. Like they hold back, they're more closed off. But you kind of notice when the people are the most free and liberated in their body, they're more gentle, they're more soft. And it shows emotionally in their way they move their body. Not just in a practice when you're flowing and you're doing your acrobatics or your favorite exercise, whether it's working out in the gym, going upside down in your handstands, or dancing and playing and flowing. But also your day-to-day life, how you walk through life. Emotionally, how confident, comfortable you are. And that'll lead to your emotions too. When you're fragile, your emotions are quite fragile. And you see that in today's society. The people who suffer their body, their emotions are quite different because they're suffering their mind as well. And a lot of our emotions come from our five senses. And when your five senses are blocked, meaning your sense of your body, your sense of your mind, and you can't control your mind because you can't control your body, plays a big role into your emotions. So you're a little bit more, whether you're more closed off because you're too tight, or when you're a little bit more fragile, you're a little bit more afraid of the world because you're afraid of hurting yourself. But then there's the vice versa side. When you start to put more effort and energy towards bettering your body, working on your emotions, what makes you sad, what ticks you off, what makes you cranky, what makes you happy, what makes you joyful, what makes you ecstatic, then you start to realize it's not so random, but we have more control of it, our emotions and our body. But there's a level of practice and discipline. Maybe you have to work on the body before you can start to work on your emotions and your mind, or vice versa. Maybe work on your mind, get that right, then work on your body so you can work on your emotions. So that's the way I see it, and that's the relationship I have with my emotions. As I'm more free in my body, I find my emotions and the way I perceive life and people and compassion and empathy, it heals me more. I attach a lot of my emotions to my plants. As my plants grow, I feel like I'm growing, because I have to give my plants a significant amount of time, energy, and love and care, because you got to plant them, you got to talk to them, you got to clean them, you got to wipe them off, you got to pick out the dirty leaves. Oh, by the way, I do enjoy plants and greenery. One of my newest favorite passions. So that's part of my emotions, and that's part of my practice with movement and life in general.
I love it. Yeah, emotions are energy in motion, and sometimes they get stuck in our physical bodies. So the movement just gives us opportunity to let go of that stuck energy so we can show up more open, more receptive. So what is your favorite way to move your body?
Currently, favorite way to move my body. So you and I, we went to Gaga ecstatic dance, and we started to move abstractly, dynamically, without control. Whatever just felt good, it felt good. And we were given a little bit of cues and just to rotate and move, but we kind of were all free flowing. I realized that I do more free flowing in my day-to-day life throughout my day. Because I hold a lot of trauma and injuries in my body, and I felt the best way I can settle with it is not to settle with it, but constantly move it. So throughout my movement practice, I try to move and find different ways to manipulate the spine, twist and turn. So it's always connective and active. I'm always touching base and touching in with myself and where am I tight and not tight. But outside of that kind of random movements with my spine, my shoulders, my hands, and trying to get the blood continue to flow all the time. It's kind of weird, but I do it a little bit discreet, so it's not awkward all the time. But I do move quite a bit. I don't really sit still. I don't really stand still. I'm always trying to feel out my hip. I'm always working on my ankles, my toes, my knees, if I can stretch it or take away some tension anywhere. I'm always doing it. And then I fall in love with a little bit of everything because I do movement. Movement is a wide vocabulary and many categories. So there's strength training. I do a lot of body weight training. I also rock climb. I also love to swim, go hiking, do acrobatics, do some floor contemporary work. And again, like I said from the beginning, I'm a yoga teacher, so I like to do stretches and I like to work on certain areas of my body where I just have to be creative and use everything in total, but it'll just depend on the day and the energy. A lot of the days I like feeling strong, so I'll do a lot of calisthenics, muscle ups. I try to work on handstands, so build my core. But then also again, I like to be free in my body, so I'll do a locomotion practice where I'm going onto the floor and then maybe going onto my hands for a split second in a cartwheel, or rolling over my shoulders, or waving my legs in the air like I'm breakdancing. And it's quite fun to move that way too. So I do a little bit of all that. But there's days I want to be challenged and not have to think how to move. So I'll go do rock climbing or I'll go for a hike. But right now, to sum it up, the ones that I do most is just, moving my body any chance I get. So if I feel a kink in my shoulders, I'll roll out my shoulders. If I feel a kink in my head, I'll roll my head and neck. I don't let anything sit and I don't let anything settle. Movement is medicine.
So when you do a movement practice, what are you focusing on? Do you focus on the movement of your body parts? Do you focus on how it makes you feel? Or do you focus on how your feelings make you move?
I guess you get all three, but at least for me as a practitioner of it, it's in that order. I do it for the skill. If you're talking about a movement practice for skill-based, like handstands, cartwheels, aerials, and like backwards flips and backflips and stuff like that, then yes, skill chasing in the beginning, seeing if I'm capable to learn it, and just loving the repetition and the practice and the progress build up towards to get to that ultimate goal. And I find it challenging. It's like a hike, right? You don't know when you get to the top until you get to the top, but you're on some sort of weird journey. It gives you the desire and the passion to do it every day. And then once you start to achieve it and you receive the benefits, it oozes out. Like learning how to do a handstand is a great skill to learn for anyone and everyone, because you don't realize how much work you have to put into it, but how much benefit it comes with. And I always tell my students, it's not always about the container, but what's inside the container that you can receive and why you're doing it. And that'll give you the reason why. Like to learn how to do a handstand, it'll teach you dedication, it'll teach you passion, because you have to be dedicated and passionate to be able to withstand a long practice and journey like that. It'll build your hand strength. It'll relieve a lot of your shoulder tension. It'll be able to give you the upper body strength you've always wanted. And just to be able to go upside down is just a great rewarding feeling itself. So through there, you'll get emotional. It'll be a feel practice. How does it make you feel? Because like you yourself, you're a handstand enthusiast and you're handstanding any chance you get. And then you realize one of those days where you're so busy and caught up with work, caught up with life, caught up with errands that you didn't get to do a handstand, and you're like, that day was missing something. I gotta go on my hands at least once a day, or I don't feel like I did me today, and you miss it. So I like to play on my hands, I like to do my movement. And then now with certain movements that I'm good at, I feel a great bond and connection to it. And I gotta go visit every so often, because I know it's like a relationship. If you don't visit so often, it's not gonna stick around for a long time. So you have to go back and you visit, and then you build that emotion and that connection to it, because it feels good in your body, because you can work on little areas that you don't get to work on, especially when it comes to like a stretch or yoga practice, right? Everyone has their favorite postures and movements, or just that posture or movement hits you like no other, like a back bend for some people, or a wheel pose, a back bend, or a pretzel pose, like a bind, whatever, and just hits the spots nicely. So I would say right now in my life and my journey I experienced, I would go in that order. I chase the skill, and then it gives me the emotion, and then later on, that bond and that connection to it is just so rewarding, and yeah, I need more of it in my life.
Amazing. And yes to your handstands everywhere, anytime. So what is the relationship between movement and stillness?
That's a very deep question. I don't know if I can answer that, but when you ask me that, the first thing that comes to my mind is you need stillness to have movement, right? And what I'm talking about is you can always chaotically move with your body, but it will always need some time to rest and reset. And it's a weird saying, and I'm kind of caught up right now. It's like kind of saying day and night. You have to have day to understand what night is. You have to have night to understand what day is. So you have to have stillness to balance out the movement. You can't just keep moving. So you have to have stillness. But because you can't have one more outbalance the other, you need to balance it between the two. So what I mean is, you can't just consciously move and do your practice and do handstands, and then you unconsciously stay still. I think you need a little bit of both. You have to be conscious in your practice and your movement, and do it with reason. And even when it's time to be still and rest, you still need to actively conscious to be still, and actively conscious to be resting. You can't just do one consciously and one unconsciously, because it'd be a balance. So, and I find like where I'm the most primed to take on a big challenge, like a big physical practice, is when I find more stillness, and I work on stillness, like meditation, or just lying in one spot for half an hour just to relax my muscles and my joints on the hardwood floor. Just to feel the coldness that runs through my body, but allowing my joints and all my tension and my pain release. It's a weird feeling, but the flat floor helps. And or build a more active meditation, like a qigong meditation, when your hands are in the air and you're sitting in a horse stance or a low squat, or a high squat in fact, and you're just holding it for 10 minutes, and you're just allowing the emotions and the energy and the fatigueness just run through your body. So again, when you consciously work on something, like when you consciously go to the gym and you lift weights to build certain muscles like biceps and chest, you get rewarded, and all the benefits it has to come when you get stronger biceps, stronger chest. So I mean, when you're consciously working on stillness, there's a lot of benefits and rewards that you receive from it consciously. Because not always when you do something consciously can you understand and receive all the benefits that specific skill. And being still is a skill. To be good at it, to be restful and peaceful and still, takes practice. You can't just fake it. And a lot of times we fake it. So when we fake it, we don't allow it to do its full role and give us its full benefits. So there's an imbalance there when we're consciously working on movement. So for me in my practice, I think they're both very important, and I do both of them very consciously as much as I can. So I'm more conditioned and trained when I'm unconscious, when I'm moving unconsciously, or when I need to rest, when I need to sleep. My mind's a little bit more still, and my energy is more still. So I rest easier, sleep easy, move better.
Yeah, conscious rest and conscious stillness, and then conscious movement, physical movement.
And you're well trained when you have that appreciation and that dedication to see it as stillness and rest and everything you do as a skill, and it needs a little bit of sharpening, then you're gonna have that as a tool for the rest of your life. You can flip it on, you can use it as a switch, and it's not so random. So you have a bit more control of your day. I find today's society, because of the lack of movement, they got a lack of rest, or vice versa, because they have a lack of rest. Because some people go to sleep, but they're not well rested in the next day. They're a little bit more low energy. Have you ever gotten the feeling of sleeping but waking up in the morning and not being well rested? Yeah, we get that, and because we don't have control over that, but we don't realize that we can sharpen those little skills. We might not be able to control it all the time, but sometimes it can feel like, okay, time to rest. We flip that switch, rest. But when it's time to move, we move. We're capable of, we're confident, we're liberated in our knees, hips, and joints. But when it's time to be still, when it's time to shut that mind off for a minute or two, or just stay focused on one thing at a time and not allowing that mind to take over, it needs practice. And that's where I think we lack the day we were born. We weren't taught these certain skills. And then we're finding out later, like, where's this been all our life? But is it even important? Because we were never taught it, right? The human mind is a powerful tool, like a computer, like a vehicle, an automobile. But even your automobile and your computer comes with a manual. But the human mind, the most powerful tool known to man, it never came with a manual. So we got to learn to build a conscious practice to build our own manual to see how it works ourselves. Because every mind is a little bit different. Everyone feels a little bit different. Everyone has a little bit different beliefs and perspectives. So it's our goal to learn how to create our own manual by our rituals, routine, and our practices.
So if people want to start moving, what would be the entry points and basic movements that people can start with? So how should people approach a movement practice?
The best way to start movement practice is just to start. And it's just to start by everyday little things. I would say maybe start off sitting in squat for a couple minutes a day. And the reason why I question squat is, I understand not everyone can sit in squat. Squat has been a difficult position and posture for a lot of people who begin. But the reason why I want you to begin there is because it's supposed to be used as the most restful state and posture known to humankind. We were sitting in squat before we were sitting in chairs, lying in beds, and driving vehicles with seats. But we've lost that ability to sit in squat. Like, you can see any young child can go into a squat position very comfortably. In fact, we started crawling and squatting before we started running and walking. So start there and assess yourself. Can I sit in squat? Do it a few times a day, a couple of times, just going to the deepest, holding it for a few seconds, and then coming back up. And then resolving the issues why you can't go into squat. So maybe you have tight knees, tight hips, tight ankles, and you realize that. And where can I find some answers to release some of that tension I have in my ankles so my heels can touch the floor? Or sometimes, what kind of tension do I have to release in my hips and my lower back so I can sit into my squat deeper? And I think if you start to figure out that a Rubik's Cube, it's going to open more doors for you to explore different types of movement. So one of the easiest practices to get into is like a gentle yoga practice, because they'll be moving the positions of their body a lot more uniquely and different than you would in your day-to-day life. There's a well-known statistic out there that they say that your average 9-to-5er, the person who just goes to work and goes home and takes care of their life and family and responsibilities, maybe only uses about 20 movements in a day. And what I mean is, like, you wake up, you get out of bed, you brush your teeth, you go to the bathroom, you either hop in a car or hop on a bus, you go to work, you sit in an office. Whether your work is a little bit more active with construction, you're only using about 10-15 movements during construction or 10-15 movements at the office sitting. And then you go home, you do your errands, you walk forward, you may sit, you may eat, and then you go sleep, and you rinse, you cycle, you repeat. And your day-to-day becomes that same repetitive pattern. But when they say a baby and a contemporary dancer uses up to 2,000 movements, we start to realize we went from 2,000 movements to only 20 movements. And you wonder why you're dealing with so many ailments when we're in our body later on compared to as we were younger. When we were younger, we didn't have to think about how to sit on the floor or how to get off the floor or go for a run or go for a hike. We just did it intuitively. But along the ways now, if you ask any grown adult to do a few gentle tasks like, hey, can you sit on the floor and then stand up, and then sit on the floor and then stand up? Can you go upside down in your hands? They'll have to think twice before they do those actions. Even the simplest action of sitting on the floor and then getting back up. I promise you, that's the most awkward feeling for the majority of the society out there. You get them to sit on the floor comfortably for a minute and get them to get off the floor comfortably and stand back up into an upward position. It's the most awkward thing possible. But again, like I said a little earlier, we're children of the floor. We started off as the floor. In fact, our parents threw us on the floor to learn how to deal with the floor. But along the way, we became adults, and then we got disconnected and attached to the floor. And then we started to create so many ailments in our body and our life. So I would just say the first thing to do with your movement practice is learn to squat and build a relationship on the floor. Learn how to sit comfortably on the floor, lie comfortably on the floor for 5-10 minutes, and then go do a yoga practice or go to a dance class where they have to use the floor more or low positions a little bit more. And actively get comfortable with the floor again. If you can learn how to get comfortably and low again, you'll never be scared of it. I work with a lot of tall, injured people and a lot of older people, and their worst nightmare is falling and not being able to get back up. But if you built a relationship with the floor in the beginning and right now, you'll never be afraid of the floor, and I promise you, it'll open new ways to move, to stand, to walk, to run. You'll lose all that sensitivity in your back, your spine, as long as you build a relationship with the floor. Now, when I do yoga, I don't need a mat underneath my knees. I don't hold on to tight back and tight tension in my back because I'm always rolling around in my movement practice on the floor. So start there. Build a relationship with the floor, learn how to squat. And if you can solve those two things in a short span of time, you solve half of the ailments and injuries and lack of possibilities in your body.
So what does a movement practice begin with? Is it education? Is it just awareness that people live in a body, that they move? Just bringing attention to the fact that everything is in motion and how they move, how they use their face or facial expressions, how they use their breath.
I would say the first steps of the movement practice is, okay, sit down with yourself and ask yourself, what's one new activity, movement activity, whether it's cycling or whether it's yoga, or whether it's acrobatics or dance. Ask yourself, how much time am I willing to dedicate into learning this? And I would say there's a rule of thumb for everything that we do. It's called 7, 21, and 90. If you do anything for 7 days, you start to build new habit. If you do anything for 21 days, you start to break old habit. And if you do anything for 90 days, it can become a lifestyle. So whatever it is that you're going to start in your life, you need that awareness, that awakeness, and that dedication. Okay, I want to learn yoga, but I can't just do one and get intimidated and never come back. Can I do this 7 times? And it's even better if you have enough time and willing to push yourself for 7 days in a row, because then you start to build a practice, and you start to build a habit. Because everything you start to do, it needs a practice, it needs a habit, or you never maintain it. There's so many people who start something and they quit, and they quit way before they start to receive the benefits of a beautiful yoga practice, of a beautiful acrobatic practice, or salsa or dance practice, whatever it is that people enjoy. You gotta be willing to ask yourself, I gotta create good habit, so I need to do it for at least 7 days. Are you willing to sacrifice 7 days of your life just to know if you like it or not? Because I promise you, if you invest 7 days of your life into anything it is you do, and I mean 7 quality days of putting my full potential into learning dance, even though it's going to be hard in the beginning and you're not going to learn a lot, but if you dedicate 7 days straight of just trying to learn, I promise you after 7 days you'll learn something. You might even learn to like it. So 7 days. Then you got to ask yourself, this thing I'm doing, am I willing to put 21 days? Because I promise you, if you put 21 days, you start to break old habits. You start to get less lazy. But you start to realize that it wasn't so hard after all, after 21 days. And you can use the same model and blueprint and attach that to anything. Because after 90 days, and I promise you, even me learning different things, if I invest in about 90 days, 3 months worth of my time and energy into a certain activity and time, that one means I like it, or I wouldn't waste 90 days on it. But then I find I start to miss it in my life if I don't have it. So I find it starts to become a lifestyle. I would say start there. How much time and energy are you willing to divide and pour into whatever it is you want to try to do? But you have to pour a significant amount of time before you can judge it or decline it and say it's not for me. Everything's for you. It's just, are you willing to go through the uncomfortableness of learning something new? But if you keep this thought pattern of 7, 21, 90, and again I'll repeat, 7 days to create new habit, 21 days to break old habit, and 90 days to create a new lifestyle, I promise you, everything you do in life, it just takes 90 days if you want to change your life.
Yes, we need to practice what we need, not what we are actually already good at. And we need to look for discomfort a little bit more. And we need to be willing to fail at the execution of those new movements, like we did yesterday. And you showed me some new skills and some new movements, and it feels very uncomfortable to try out something new, but it is also very useful and very helpful.
And it's exciting. It tingles all these new feelings that you forgot about. Even like for yourself in your yoga practice and your handstand practice, although you're very great at it, it stops to tickle those different senses as if you were a beginner and starting something fresh. And you were a beginner in my classes, whether it's my yoga class because you didn't know what to expect and you said there was a lot of exploring, or my movement class when my good buddy Ali started teaching the class and we did some modeling, clay modeling games, and then we did a stick game, and then we got in our hands, we started crawling around the floors. It stimulated new stimulations and feelings in your senses and your body, and it felt good again. It felt good to feel, just to feel.
Yeah, it's the practice of letting go of judgments and letting go of expectations. And it also builds that trust with yourself, and you feel safer in your own body through exploration and through movement and through doing different new things and shapes. You get to know yourself better. And it also gives you this opportunity to build the relationship with yourself through movement, through physical practice, and through exploration, and through trying out different shapes and different movements. So when you teach movement, what is the main intention and the main message that you have and you would like to share?
Yeah, every time I go into a movement session, whether I'm teaching it or taking it, the one takeaway I want you to take away in my classes or when I take classes is to have fun. If I can get you to just have fun and enjoy those 60 minutes or 90 minutes, or in some cases in my movement classes, 2 hours, is you can walk away and say, I had fun. Whether you learn something or not, and I promise you, you learn better when you're having fun than when you have to focus and be all serious. But at least you can say, I spent a good quality 2 hours. Because there's a lot of times we can go do something for an hour, and we're like, oh, we wasted an hour, and it just drains us and just brings us down for the rest of the day. So my biggest takeaway is playfulness. And then within playfulness, you're going to reap the benefits of just having fun, being a kid again. And within these games that we play, in these patterns we learn, we're actually really benefiting the body and building the necessary skills to be the full potential human you can be. Like intuitively and instinctively, because we play instinctive games. We play games where you have to use your intuition and instincts, and you really sharpen those tools and skills, and we don't realize how much of those tools and skills we need through our day-to-day life. And it's just a cool feeling to learn and to be able to teach it and share it with you all or people who come to the classes. So biggest model is come and have fun. Don't come in with any type of expectations to learn or to achieve, but come just to play and have fun. Because if I have to spend this next hour or 2 hours, I might as well enjoy it. So if you want to come and enjoy something, come and move with me. We'll play games, we'll do some locomotion, we'll play on our hands, we'll be upside down. We might even do some cartwheels. But I couldn't find a better way to spend my next hour or two than doing that with a group of people and just sharing a couple of laughs and connecting.
So you mentioned fun and you mentioned playfulness, which is an important part of your teaching and your classes. And you're also using external objects in your classes as well. Can you say something about that? What is the importance of using external objects? What is the benefit? And what is the role of external objects in your classes?
Yeah, so we use a lot of props to play games in our classes. It helps us, one, to be a little bit more creative with certain games. There's only so many games that you want to play with just your bare hands and your feet, although you can come up with a lot of games. But it's just to change it up. It's just to give it a different twist to certain movements, patterns we do. Like learning how to move, how to entertain yourself with the ball. I have a ball in my hand right now. But if I left you in a room with a ball, can you entertain yourself? Because so many times of the day, we need external stimulant, whether it comes to our technology, our cell phones, our music. So I kind of teach you how to be creative again, intuitive again, and just to play with your creativity. Can you be creative? And then it's just fun using it as props for games. Like we play a stick game where we got to manipulate the spine and roll and do spinal twists and waves around the stick. I mean, there's other ways and other tools you can use to do that, but we just find it more fun. Like this other game, I have a pylon and a dice and a cube. And then we'll sit and squat. We'll play head, shoulders, knees, toes, head, shoulders, knees, toes, and then pylon. And you have to grab the pylon. So you're working on your instinctions, and you're working on your squats, and you're working on grabbing a pylon. Like who the hell grabs a pylon? Who grabs a dice? And then we do like a teapot stretch, a warm up in the beginning. And I'll place an object in their hand, something heavy or something light. And then they do a sequence of arm, wrist, shoulder openers and movement, and they have to keep that teacup, our imaginary teacup, which is the object I gave you, upright, and you're trying not to drop it or spill the tea in a sense. So yeah, having just different props in your practice is just more fun ways to play. Like who doesn't love toys? Like we grew up wanting and buying toys so we can play with it. So in my classes, in my practice, we add props, equipment, and toys so we can play with, so it entertains ourselves. Because I promise you one last quote on it, but even when we were a child and as an adult, the easiest way to learn something is when we are in our most playful, most focused, and most happy state. And if you remember back to when we were a child, when school used to be fun, when it was so fun to go and see our friends and then play our favorite activity, whether it's like handball or tennis ball or whatever ball, and then to be present in that moment, that euphoric feeling of just being present and there in the moment. And if you can repeat that throughout your day and in your practice, I find it being such a great tool.
Yeah, props can help you build the focus, but also the more you explore movement, the more you explore yourself, then you also explore more tools you have within you can play with, like your breath, your senses, your eyes, your vision, like the movement within, which requires a lot of practice, and it is a little bit more challenging just being present with yourself. But it is an interesting exploration. So thank you so much for all the tools. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for all the tools you shared with me. And please tell people where they can find you on social media or wherever you are in case they have more questions and they would like to work on their movement practice.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for letting me be a guest on your podcast. I thought this was a great experience, and you're a great interviewer, and it was very fun. What I'm trying to say, it was very fun. We had a long day. We got to go on a hike together, and we got to learn about each other's lives a little bit. So now to be able to be a guest on this podcast, I felt very comfortable. You made me feel very comfortable, and I really enjoyed this podcast and the questions that you gave. And now to find me, you can find me on social media. I am Louis, Louis, moves on Instagram. So Louis, Louis, moves, moves. That's the best way you can reach out to me to find out more of what I do. My movement classes here out in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And or reach out to join one of my classes or just to check out what I do, because I might be a cool person. I might not, but in my books, I'm pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. Okay, cool. Thank you. All the links to connect you will find in the show notes. Please let me know what your takeaways are and what changes you are committed to implement into your daily life. Talk to you soon. Thank you for being curious. If you enjoyed listening, rate, review, subscribe, share, and join the conversation. Do not miss out on yourself, your power, and what is possible for you.